So, Robyn, you are the CEO of Man Group, right?
Correct.
And you're not a man, right?
Well, since I last looked, yeah.
And you're the first woman to be the CEO of Man Group in 250 years or something like that?
Something like that, yep.
So, how did you get to that job?
Yeah, determination. How did I get to that job? One, I worked there for a decent amount of time. Two, I've held lots of different roles. And I've got lots of war wounds to show for it. And I was the best person for the job when it came open.
Okay. And the best person for the job always gets the job?
I like to think so.
Okay. And Ken, your firm has been extraordinarily successful in everything it's touched. But in the Great Recession of 07, 08, you came very close to not being that successful. Were you ever worried that you weren't going to survive in the 07, 08 period?
So 07, no. 07 was actually a phenomenal year for us. But there was a day, 08, I remember getting in the elevator at home and saying, like literally, I hope when I come back, we're still in business. And CNBC had a van parked outside of our four walls trying to get that bankruptcy footage. So it was a tough 16 weeks in 2008. Now, the good news is history is written by the winners. We've had a great run since 2008, and that moment's largely become a footnote in our history, but one that I'll never forget.
Michael, you're identified as the CEO for a long time of Ryanair, but you didn't start Ryanair. Mr. Ryan started it. Had you not been working for him, do you think you would ever have wound up in some capacity like your job you have now? Because the personality you have now is a personality, did you have that personality before, or did you grow it as you kind of were running this airline?
In other words, did I always have a deformed personality? Probably. I was educated by Christian brothers and then Jesuits, so it was a miracle I survived that. Would I be in the airline industry? No, I would hopefully have gotten a job in a proper functioning industry where you could make money like Kenny. But unlike Robyn, in my case, I got the job in Ryanair because nobody else wanted it. The Ryans had set up Ryanair to be at the start of EU deregulation back in 1987. They wanted to kind of compete with Aer Lingus on the Irish-UK routes, and they lost 20 million in 3 years, and the thing was going bust. I was this bright young guy coming out of college, had my accountancy degree. I was actually very quiet, reticent. I don't want to be I never wanted the publicity. And eventually they ran out of chief executives. There was nobody left to run the bloody place. So I was sent in to just staunch the losses, do whatever you want, and go whatever you want to do. My first recommendation was close this turkey. It's never going to make money. It's doomed to bloody fail. This industry is for the birds. And Tony, thankfully, sent me off to see Southwest in the States at the time when Herb Kelleher was doing what he did so well in Austin in Texas. He was a legend, and he was the guy who kind of created the low-fare industry. And I was sent off to see him. And I have this legendary dinner with Herb Kelleher. What do you remember at the dinner with Herb Kelleher? Absolutely bloody nothing. He was at the time about 65. I was about 26. He drank me under the table before the starters had even got there. But I saw Southwest. I'd come from Europe. Oh, everything was slow. A plane would arrive in, and an hour and 15 minutes later would turn around because the pilots had to have a smoke and the cabin crew had to have a whinge. And everybody had to call their union to see whether they were feeling like going out to the next flight of the day. This thing arrived in, it was like a Formula One pit stop, aircraft in, everybody on it, aircraft out, gone. Yep. And it was pretty clear if you could turn planes around in 15 or 20 minutes instead of an hour and 15 minutes, you get 3 more free flights per day per aircraft. So that's where it all came from. So it was the combination of Tony Ryan's stupidity in setting up an airline, but Herb Kelleher's vision in saying you can actually run a very efficient airline, which is the key to Ryanair's success.
Now, earlier you mentioned a couple times safety as being an exception to some things, but sometimes people would say, well, if it's a low-cost airline, maybe they're going to scrimp on safety. How can you assure people you're not scrimping on safety?
You can't, but ultimately we've now been doing this for about 35 years. We have the youngest, newest fleet of aircraft in Europe. We have a fleet of 650 Boeing 737s. We bought them all from new. We own them all. They're not owned by some bloody leasing company, so we own them all. Depreciation is our only charge. We have no debt on the balance sheet. We train all our own pilots. We have 16 simulator centres. We do all our own aircraft maintenance in-house, and we're about to take the engine maintenance in-house as well. So the best you can do is you point to your record over 35 years And certainly in our first 15 or 20 years, it was, it's a bit cheap and, they don't fucking do the maintenance. I think that's kind of disappeared, but you're only as good as today. We do 3,500 flights today. We'll carry 700,000 people today. Today we have to do everything safely. Tomorrow we have to do everything safely. And it always makes me worry. Statistically, the bigger and bigger and bigger we get, I always worry statistically you're likely to have a screw up somewhere along the way. But so far, for 35 years, we've managed to avoid it.
Okay, Ken, many people don't realize you operate two big businesses. One is the most profitable hedge fund ever, Citadel, but you have a separate business, Citadel Securities. What is Citadel Securities, and why did you start that business when you already had a very profitable hedge fund?
So Citadel Securities is one of the largest market makers in the world. In fact, we trade about 25% of the U.S. equity turnover every day. And over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've averaged about $1 trillion a day in turnover. So it is a firm that is at the center point of liquidity around the world. It is powered by world-class technology, great predictive analytics, and a really, really brilliant management team. So it shares much of the same DNA as the hedge fund side of the house. Great people, great technology, great analytics. It's very much similar to what we do in the hedge fund in terms of the culture and ethos, but we do it with a very different commercial intent.
Now, there's a story that might be apocryphal. Many stories about people who are famous have apocryphal background stories. One of the apocryphal background stories about you is that when you were in college, you got Harvard University to allow you to set up an antenna that would receive stock quotes, so as a student you could trade stock. Is that true?
So it was a satellite dish, actually. I was updating my Xbox with my son next to me, and he was about 13. He's 18 now. He looks at me and goes, "Dad, you were alive before the internet." and back in the 80s, there was no internet. There was no, stock quotes were actually hard to get. So I had a satellite dish on top of the dorm room. The cable actually came through the 4th floor window, down an unused elevator shaft, and into my room. And that gave me access to real-time prices from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
And it worked.
It worked.
And if you hadn't done that, or if your early trades hadn't worked, would you be doing something more important like being a lawyer or something
I'd be
like
doing
that?
private equty, David.
Right, okay. Well, there's no higher calling than private equity, of course.
Should have been chasing girls around the college dorm.
So Robyn, can you
Deferred
explain,
gratification, Michael.
you're a publicly traded hedge fund.
Yeah.
Most hedge funds are privately owned. Why are you publicly owned, and what's the advantage of being publicly owned in the hedge fund world?
Well, not my choice, by the way, so I haven't sat in that seat, so 35 years roughly of listing. So advantages. Everybody knows what's going on at Man Group. There is nothing to hide. And so in those quarterly updates that we do, that Michael looks so forward to doing, we are completely transparent. And clients like that. Institutionally, if you're going to be in a space where people are looking at you and saying, hang on a second, are these people we want to do business with? Sometimes there's an advantage to having to tell everybody what's going on in your firm every quarter. So that's an advantage.
All right, but you came to this firm largely as a lawyer and as a compliance officer.
Yeah.
Usually compliance officers are people tell you can't do this, you can't do that. How did you go
Didn't
from...
say I was a good compliance officer.
People are telling you you can't do this, you can't do that. Usually don't rise up to be the CEO. So were you a not that good compliance officer?
I believe that sometimes the best people to understand risk are the people who want to take the risk as well. If you sit me in my executive team, they'll probably sit down and tell you, perhaps the person with the highest risk tolerance in the organization is me. And that's something that either I've grown up on because I was a sort of a litigator, I guess, in American terms, or a barrister if you go back into the UK. So I'm an advocate. I understand risk. I've grown up in risk. I've run towards risks when sensible people have run away from them. And that makes my understanding of risk management, which is what we do all day, and what we deliver all day, quite acute. So no, it's not usual. Was I a terrible compliance officer? I don't think I was terrible, but I understand risk.
Okay, Michael, not long ago, you said that you wanted to charge people to go to the bathroom in your planes.
Right.
Did that plan ever work? And why were people so upset about that? Because couldn't they go for 45 minutes without going to the bathroom if they didn't want to pay?
This is one of the great free stories that keeps on giving. But I did an interview with some BBC news journalists about 25 years ago. I don't know, but we were on about something else. I think taking seats out and putting sand in cabins, and like the tube in London, they'd be hanging onto the rails. And she said, "What's next? Are you going to charge for toilets?" And yeah, we have a team working on that at the moment. And if we could take out the 2 toilets at the back, we could put in 6 seats, and 6 seats with 4% lower fares. And it still comes back every 25. You're the guy who wants to charge for toilets on board planes. There is actually, we won't do it, but there is a theory in it. Actually, if you could take out 2 of the loos, only have 1 toilet left and charge for the planes. You look at the extent to which people obsess about not paying for our baggage fees on board. You have people packing up and weighing on the weigh scales in their bathrooms. I'm not going to pay bloody Ryanair for the bag. They do the same thing with the toilet as well on board. And we could put extra seats on the plane. And with extra seats, we'd be able to charge lower airfares. But we're not going to do it.
You talked about once about charging extra for people who are overweight.
No, we were very good. We actually never did that one. One, because it wouldn't make...
Don't give him ideas.
That was actually... that came out of the States, I think, where, with respect. There are quite a lot of physically challenged people. The Europeans are a bit slimmer, although it's because we're paying so much stupid environmental taxation over here. No, we never planned to... aircraft weights are done on average weights for adults and children, so it would make no difference anyway.
You have a good business in Europe. Why don't you just take that business to the United States? Why don't you go to the United States?
Because that is where the culture starts to go wrong. You believe in your own bullshit. We work this very well in Europe because we have pretty much incompetent competition in Europe. Like Lufthansa, Air France, KLM, and these guys are run by incompetent European government-owned airlines. The US airlines are a bit more aggressive. They are much stronger and much more well embedded. And the minute we in our management team says, this has worked great in Europe, let's all go off to America, California or Florida, and we can run an airline over there. They'll all be out the door to go to sunshine. I mean, if you've spent any winter in Ireland, everybody wants to get the hell out of the place. Okay. So that would be distraction. The other, I think Kenny's demonstrated over many years in Citadel, zealous focus on your business. Do not get distracted. And I don't want to go to... Europe is a deregulated market. The only good thing about Europe is it is a deregulated market for air travel. So thankfully, I get very little government interference. The minute I go outside of Europe to the Middle East, to Asia, to the US, it is hugely government regulated. And the States is already a reasonably well-run, although it's quite expensive. Now, it wouldn't work, and it would undermine Ryanair because we'd all get distracted.
Now, you're trained as an accountant. But usually the accountants I know are usually low-key people, very boring people. How did you get this personality as an accountant?
Well, firstly, a lot of people question whether I was trained or even trainable. I did pass the exams, but only barely. I grew up on a farm, so I'm a farm boy. We learned how to work hard. I was always, if I came through accountancy, I wanted to be very kind of quiet and retired. I don't like the publicity. But I recognized when I got into Ryanair, we had no money for advertising, so it had to do something. Branson at the time was running around do all the cheap publicity. Herb was very good at it in the States as well. So it was the obvious thing to do was, okay, you can't be successful here if you're going to be a kind of quiet as a mouse accountant. So let's reinvent. Now, and remember, the Irish are generally good at being brash bullshitters. Right. So there is a gene in all of us where we just talk a lot of rubbish. And we're very good at talking lots of rubbish. In fact, we've built generations.
Would you hire an accountant with your personality?
Would I hire an accountant? Thankfully, I have much more sensible people hiring accountants than the likes of me.
You're not doing that.
I would hire people. I look at CVs. So Kenny looks at CVs. He gets these summa cum laudes out of Harvard. I want people, if they grew up on a farm, they're in the door straight away. And the thing I look for is not what your degree was, is what summer jobs did you do, during your holidays from school and from college? And if you worked hard and you went out, you got part-time jobs, those are the people I want working in Ryanair. I want people who work hard. Okay. Brains, it's the airline industry. We don't need a lot of brains, and we don't need very bright intellects because it's a stupid industry anyway.
Ken, recently the mayor of New York pointed out that you had bought an apartment in New York and he wanted you to pay a so-called pied-à-terre tax. Even though you have employed thousands of people in New York, you're building a new building in New York, you're contributing a lot of tax money to New York. Did that upset you?
What upset me was the personal attack. Like you were at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday where they tried to assassinate the president. And not too far from where I live in New York is where they assassinated the CEO of United Healthcare. So I think the willingness of the mayor of New York to make this a policy debate, a personal attack, just demonstrated a profound lack of judgment, just a profound lack of judgment. And I understand that New York has bills to pay. Would you like to run New York for us for a couple of years?
I'm unelectable, Kenny. Nobody would vote for me.
Yes, but like you could
I
actually
should be a
save-
distraction from running
So
Ryanair.
are you going to, Ken, you're going to go ahead with your building in New York?
Well, you know, I'm meeting with the governor Thursday,
Okay, you'll figure it out.
and we'll talk about our future direction in New York. Here's the real question. Is New York going to put their fiscal house in order and run itself from a position of a strong government that's pro-business? Or are they looking to play, like why do the Americans think we can do socialism? Like, we have none of that in our DNA, and we're just going to screw it up.
Now, Ken, you are a very large, maybe the largest donor in the United States of various political candidates, and you've met many of these political candidates. You're probably smarter than all of them. Why don't you just run for president yourself? You ever thought of that?
Didn't you just say I was smarter than all of them? I mean, David, like, what a nightmarish job these people sign up for.
To be the president of the United States, you wouldn't want to do that job?
Okay, if you could snap your fingers and be in the Oval Office, of course I'd love to do that job. That would be like such, I love solving problems,
Right.
but it's not that simple. You've got to go through a campaign cycle, which is just the most humiliating and degrading process in the American society.
So you're also a very large donor to lots of charitable causes. How do you deal with people coming to you every hour on the hour for charitable contributions?
Kaysen and Julia.
You have somebody that takes care of it for you.
I do. I've got two outstanding people that take care of it. My job is to manufacture money. We spoke of that early on. I've got my investment team. I focus on the business as much as I possibly can. I've got great people around me who are involved in our philanthropic efforts, who are involved in our political efforts. They know the values that are important to me. They know the key objectives that we're trying to obtain, like how do we educate American children to be the future leaders of the free world. But my day in and day out, it's about driving the returns for our shareholders.
The U.S. hasn't had a recession for more than 10 years, more than a technical recession. Usually have them every 7 years or so. Are you worried about a recession in part because of the war in Iran or anything else coming in the United States?
I mean, look, the business cycle hasn't been banned. We both know this. You know this. We all know this. Everybody in this room knows this. The business cycle has not been banned. We're going to have a recession around the world at some point here in the foreseeable future. What worries me is not the fact that we're going to have a recession. It's that we're losing the fiscal space to engage in countercyclical spending to keep the economy on the strongest possible footing. And frankly, if there were a panic in the credit quality of the leading sovereign debts around the world, the U.S. happened to the U.K. just, about 18 months ago now,
Correct.
was it? Liz
Yeah.
Truss's moment?
10 days.
Yes.
10 days of excitement. Yep.
I mean, terrifying, is it not, as a risk manager?
Yeah.
Right. So the key is the Western world has to put its fiscal house in order so that we have more flexibility and more capacity in the next downturn to keep people employed, to keep our businesses going, to keep our economies as strong as possible when they're under duress.
Okay. Robyn, this week in the United States, the King of England is visiting the President. You're
Yes.
a British citizen.
I am.
What do you want to have the King get out of those meetings? Are many people in England focused on that? And why send the King? Why not send the Prime Minister to meet with the President of the United States?
It's great when you're asked to speak about why the King is doing something. Anyway, so I saw on social media, I do that thing, interviews with the American general population about, did you know the King and the Queen is coming? And a lot of them said, not really, and I'm not sure why. And when asked what they should do, the American population, these folks on social media said, they recommended certain burger joints that they could go and visit, which I thought was very useful. In the UK, when asked, there were at least 5 interviews where people felt sorry for the King having to do this visit, because what were they going to do and how predictable or unpredictable is that conversation? How meaningful is it going to be? I have to say I haven't spent much time thinking about what I think the King should be doing. Strangely, I'm a little like you. I'm kind of focused on what we're supposed to be doing every day, which is returning value to clients. Nevertheless, these are difficult times. And what we need is sense and stability, and what we need is some version of how we find solutions in things. And if the king can add to that debate, terrific. But I don't think I'd be holding my breath.
Okay, let's suppose I have some money and I want to invest in the Man Group. And I say, I don't really know much about investing, but I'm going to give you, I don't know, £100,000 or $100,000. What kind of rate of return could I expect to get if I went into a reasonably safe but hopefully profitable investment that you would advice for me?
So, number one, let me just explain. Man Group deals with institutions and we don't deal directly with wealth and retail, so I'm just being mindful that somebody doesn't ring up the phone at the end of this. Number two, it depends what you're after at the moment, and I think if we really think about wealth portfolios right now, what worries me, and what I think about a lot, is whether wealth and retail are having the access to diversified portfolios that they should have to try and weather the storms of this volatility that we're seeing in markets. So with 100,000, it depends on where your risk profile is. It sort of depends on how old you are. It sort of depends on how much risk you want to take. Sort of depends about whether you want to be in Europe or whether you want to be diversified. Sort of depends whether you want to lock your money up or not for a period of time. So I think it depends on a bunch of questions in the middle of that. But the thing that worries me, or the things that I think we talk about a lot with the people in this room, about how do you navigate markets at the moment when you have such volatility and such dispersion. But if you want to go into something relatively flat and relatively safe.
In the hedge fund world, there seem to be many more men running hedge funds than women. Why do you think that is, and is that going to change anytime in our lifetime?
It's an interesting question about whether the historical bunch of people who have gone into these careers are, right? There's a certain gendered nature to this. When we started looking at this years ago, we started to look at, hang on a second, what are we recruiting from? And is there some bias in the pool? And then we looked at the pool, and then we looked at universities, and we looked at who was taking the courses from whom we were hiring from. And they were predominantly being populated by men. That is changing, but it's changing slowly. And what you're not going to do is find us clicking our fingers and finding different populations of gender makeup. We want the very best people to run money. And ultimately, there is a little bit of bias in that, or a little bit of gendered nature in the pool of people. Would I like to see it change? For sure.
Michael, let's suppose you want to go on a vacation outside of Europe. And would you fly another airline? And do you fly other airlines to find out what mistakes they're making? And what airline do you think is the best next to Ryanair?
I occasionally have to go to the States on investor roadshows, David, to explain to investors like you, don't put the 100 grand into Man, put it into Ryanair shares at a 22% discount year to date. I mean, I'd fly whoever's cheapest going across the Atlantic. That's my only other kind of...
You don't, when you fly, you're going on vacation with your family, you don't fly first class on some other airline. You always want to be in the coach?
You know, I want to be on Ryanair. I want to be seen on Ryanair. The great thing of flying on Ryanair too is I can't fly. I have to fly in rows 3, 4, or 5 because if I'm up in the front row of seats, everybody thinks we're doing some VIP kind of nonsense. So, and the great advantage of it too is when I'm flying with Ryanair, I'll go up and pull the boarding cards at the boarding gate. Inevitably, I get about 25 Facebook pictures, and I appear on all these people. So, God, your man is up there doing cutting edge, front line, back to the shop floor kind of stuff. No, actually, I'm going on the same flight as you, but it's good for cheap PR.
You have complaints? Do you tell them right then and there, or do you?
I get lots of complaints. Usually, that I'm pulling the boarding passes too slowly, or I'm the reason the flight is going to go delayed. But I'm also I run our complaints department. Where we have a very prompt policy of responding to all complaints within 24 hours, usually with a polite no.
For most passengers, what's the most important thing? Price, safety, or getting there on time?
Safety is, but I mean, assume that safety is a given because without safety you have nothing. 99.999% of passengers making a booking, what's the cheapest fare to XYZ? It is not available SIM, it is not... destination, obviously, route frequency, but 99.99%, which is why the internet has transformed air travel, and machine learning, which we had, though they probably didn't spend enough time, machine learning is going to transform it again for the next 10 or 20 years.
Okay. Ken, when you're hiring people, do you want people that are high IQ, are hard workers, good athletes? I mean, somebody comes in front of you, but they're first in their class at Harvard, but they're kind of nerdy and they don't really talk very well. Do you hire them, or do you rather have an all-American athlete who looks great? What kind of people do you want to hire?
So I need both. I need both. I need people who are that all-American athlete with a lot of charisma, a lot of leadership, and a lot of intellect. Because I need people who have like the innate leadership skills that go with that. But I also need some of the people who are just wickedly smart, often a bit introverted, but we've got tough problems that need to be solved, and they know how to solve them.
Final question. What is the best sovereign wealth fund in the world, in your view?
I would have to say Norges, except they don't have enough exposure to Ryanair, but we're getting there. That's why I'm back up in Oslo again and again and again, trying to persuade them to upweight their investment.
All right. Ken, you have the same view on the best sovereign wealth fund? You have many of them invest with you.
Citadel.
Yeah, this is an absolute no-win question for me.
Right, okay.
But I will say this. I will say that the fact that the leadership team of this sovereign wealth fund is so committed to the betterment of the people of Norway is actually really touching. And I think everyone should give a huge round of applause to Nikolai and his team for their commitment to bringing the best and brightest to this organization and the consistent focus on how to deliver for the people of Norway. It's really quite remarkable.
Robyn, I assume you would have the same view, the best sovereign wealth fund that you invest with or that you're with today.
What he said, plus, because why say something when something's been said so eloquently? Plus this, we all get better, all of us, on the financial provision side when we work with the smartest people in the world. And so there is nothing better than working with a team, an investor, a sovereign wealth with Norges, who make us better at what we do. And that's what this team does.
Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you, David.
Thank you.